Stan, you've obviously done quite a bit of work in terms of diet, nutrition, and kind of those big rocks in terms of increasing performance and health markers and whatnot. I think what I kind of want to go into right now is our audience roughly has been training for about 2 to 5 years. They want to get a little bit stronger. They want to look better naked, right? What are some of the bigger rocks in terms of either nutritional marker, like blood markers, any of that, that you feel as if are probably some of the more important things to focus in on first and foremost as that foundation?
I'm a broken record, and it's one of the things that it frustrates me so much that I can't, I can't wave my pom-poms about something obscure. It's the same thing. I keep repeating myself. I see comments. Stan says the same thing every time. Well, that's because that's what fucking works. And so, and I also said in another video, look, there's nothing extraordinary about anything I say, but are you doing it? Show me. Everybody wants to show me every set and rep and everything they've ever done. Show me your hours of sleep. Show me how many calories or protein you've consumed. I'm more interested in those kinds of those consistent things.
Recovery modalities.
Exactly. I think most of my success, I think the majority of us train pretty hard. I really do think that. Unless you're, some Mankini competitor or something like that, it could be different. Or the old pre-contest, raise your reps, lighten your weight sort of folks, they don't count. But
that's some old school shit.
It's
right
an
there.
old school shit. At least I think we've learned better that, you really do have to have some degree of intensity. And I think we enjoy it more. For those people who stay in the sport, I think we enjoy, that intensity, really dumping ourselves in the gym. Most people train hard. I think what they lack possibly is outside the gym, the recovery, because it's not exciting, but it really obviously recover from and prepare for the next bout, and that bout should be superior to the prior bout. Otherwise, it's exercise, not training. There has to be some progression. Sets times reps times weight is really what it comes down to over time. And so I focus right back on the big rock is going to be sleep. And optimizing sleep, not just the quantity, but the quality. And I have a whole, that's why my book is not, it's the vertical diet, but it's not just nutrition. I talk, each chapter is everything that I want my clients to do. And I start there, and I've had big athletes, Hafthor Bjornsson, Brian Shaw, over 400 pounds, snore like freight trains, not wearing CPAPs. Lane Johnson of Philadelphia Eagles, over 300 pounds, not wearing a CPAP. These guys have apnea, and it has a major effect on their recovery. Obviously, their blood sugars has a huge effect on their blood pressure. So those
arrhythmia. I mean, there's so many other things.
100%. Yeah, their blood thickness. Kind of a quick aside here. We've had some athletes, some high-profile athletes over the last few years, and you and I have seen them for decades now. It's just not been as popular, but now it's as we see the more popular athletes in social media, we've seen some pass away, and it's led us to believe that there's something awry going on amongst our industry of bodybuilders and powerlifters and strongmen. There was a really good research report done on this. Greg Nuckols talked about it in a recent podcast where somebody had done had taken a look and compared bodybuilders and powerlifters to the general population. It appears as though there isn't a significant what you call a statistical increase in bodybuilders dying as opposed to the general population. I don't think that's good news, because cardiovascular disease obviously is our number one killer, and the vast majority of our population is overweight and obese and has type 2 diabetes. And we're supposed to be a health-oriented bodybuilding to some degree. And I understand that I did a video on YouTube called "If You Want to Be Healthy, Don't Compete." I get it.
Well, yeah, we're excluding that.
Yeah, it's a different group of folks.
Yeah.
The primary drivers of that, though, once I dispel the myth that people are dropping like flies because they bodybuild, because the vast majority of people are doing just fine, is high blood pressure and blood thickness. And those are probably the two leading, kill you now problems. And the majority of these people, as we think through the names, and we all know them, and I won't highlight them here today, they were off season. They were at a pretty heavy weight, 270, 280, 300 plus pounds. And I know a few of them, many of them personally, had sleep apnea, didn't wear a CPAP, had a prior condition. A predisposition, whether it's a genetic predisposition. We even saw this with who was the Biggest Loser coach that had a heart attack his name's escaping me right now, but he was in extraordinary shape, but he had a familial history of heart disease. So Bob Harper was his name.
Yep.
Yeah, if you were looking
Just
that
looked
up.
it up.
Yep. Anyhow, going through a whole lot of stuff here just to give some people some general background. So one of the things I've recommended, in addition obviously to sleep and sleep apnea and getting a CPAP, even if you can't go get a sleep study and you can't afford that process, I've been telling people to go on Craigslist and buy a dream station off Craigslist, or find one of those sites that'll sell you one, and I have links in my book, without the need of a prescription, because it's that important. And the drawbacks are, as far as I understand them to be, almost non-existent. I wouldn't recommend somebody usurp the proper pathway through a medical practitioner if there was significant side effects, says the guy using performance-enhancing drugs for 30 years. But I wouldn't recommend it to others. But nonetheless, that's pretty significant for aiding with blood pressure and blood thickness. And then I do a blood test, and I've talked about this for years, which is a good opportunity for me. And I just pulled my phone up here because I wanted to make sure and read this out. I just recently, and I think people know, I've talked about it before, I've done well over 100 blood tests. And I did them almost monthly throughout the later part of my competitive career, just to kind of see how much damage I was doing to myself, or what interventions I used that mitigated some of those problems. And I always did it online. And more recently, this company popped up, Smokey from Mark Bell's group up there at Super Training, reached out to me about this company called MarekHealth.com, M-A-R-E-K, health.com. And their prices are half the price of what I used to pay, which is extraordinary. And so I put together this, and so I reached out to them and I asked them to put together a panel that has all the blood tests that I usually use with my athletes, and to give them a consultation from a medical professional with that. That could be almost a $400 expense. It's probably a barrier to entry for a lot of people.
It's still cheaper because I've always used direct labs.
Yeah.
So I'm paying. I don't want to tell you what I pay for my blood work.
I did too. I paid $700-800 sometimes.
Yeah.
I found a budget panel that was still almost $300 that I used to pay. Just didn't have everything, and so I put together that panel. But that's still expensive for some people. When we were bodybuilders and powerlifters, after all. What do you?
Well, my cost is before I see Serrano, so I'm still got to see my doctor.
Right, exactly.
So I got to still pay for that.
Yeah, it's a good time to toss a joke in here. So what do you call a bodybuilder without a girlfriend?
Homeless.
There you go. So I know my clients, right? I'm one of them. I'm a meat neck at heart. I've lived this all my life. So anyhow, real quick, so I put together this budget panel. I went onto their website and I just compared what I paid to what they're charging. And this isn't a sales pitch here.
Yeah.
It's less than half. Here's a budget panel that I put together that's $102.
What are the markers?
If you can't spend that, C-reactive protein, your metabolic panel, your comprehensive metabolic panel, which has a host of studies in there, testosterone free and total, prostate-specific antigen, a urinalysis, a CBC with differential and platelets, HA1C, iron, a full iron panel, a lipid panel with LDL-HDL ratios, thyroid stimulating hormone, insulin, ferritin, estrogen. All of that is included. It's a reasonably comprehensive profile. I did not put vitamin D on there. I put it down here under also recommended.
Okay.
That was just kind of because I kind of recommend 4,000 IUs of vitamin D to everybody anyhow, and it satisfies it, I think. But I have some others I mentioned down here if you have particular concerns with the initial test, like if your LDLs are through the roof, then maybe throw in an ApoB test. If you've got gout or high blood pressure, throw in a uric acid test. If you've got erectile dysfunction, throw in a prolactin test, particularly if you're on performance-enhancing drugs, and then a more comprehensive thyroid panel if you see something there. But $102.33 at Merrick Health for a reasonably comprehensive profile that I'd like to see if somebody contacted me.
Did that have AST and ALT?
It is. That's part of it.
So that's in there.
Yeah.
So that's for $100. That's covering almost everything.
It's covering a lot. Yeah, that's for sure. So I just wanted to throw that out there that folks can do that with Merrick Health. So that kind of breaks down. What I'm saying is there's no excuse.
No, there's not. I've been saying that forever.
Check your blood
really
pressure.
Not.
In my book, I have a high blood pressure quick fix kit, which is extraordinarily effective. It goes down all of the most important things that can reduce your blood pressure significantly. Obviously, weight loss, but a lot of powerlifters aren't interested in losing weight. I've had a lot of powerlifters who I did not ask them to lose weight because they had a pending competition, but they had elevated blood pressure. I was still able to bring that down. Lane Johnson weighed 312 when I got with him, and his blood pressure, his systolic blood pressure, was in the 150s. I got him up to 333 his blood pressure was in the 120s. Sleep apnea is a big one. Hypothyroidism was a big one. Getting sufficient micronutrients such as potassium and magnesium and calcium were pretty big for that. And then the 10-minute walks after meals brings down postprandial glycemia, which is a big contributor to blood pressure anyhow, is just hyperinsulinemia. So those were the big ones, the big rocks that allowed him to gain weight and improve his cardiometabolic markers. So that's a big piece of it. So we did the sleep, we do a blood test, and then I just kind of mentioned some of the keys for hydration. And this is whether it's an athlete or whether it's a dad bod or soccer mom. I'm looking at about a gram of protein per pound of lean body mass or goal weight, about 30% of total calories. Recent study just came out that compared the Mediterranean diet to a high protein diet, which I don't classify 30% of your daily calories as high protein, and showed that the high protein diet actually performed better in terms of blood sugar control, what they deem to be, and which is kind of the primary or the largest, has the largest hazard ratio in terms of contributing to cardiovascular disease and just all-cause mortality in general. If you were to put a list together and put it in order of a hierarchy of worst to least worst, your LDL markers are way down here at about a 1.4 up to maybe 3 in terms of the hazard ratio. Your type 2 diabetes, you're looking at 10 to 15 in terms of hazard ratios, in terms of the likelihood, the percentage of people who will have some sort of cardiovascular disease or metabolic issue. And then you're talking obesity, high blood pressure, as you go down the list. But that's the big one, is blood sugar. So 30% protein in your diet has an extraordinary effect on mitigating type 2 diabetes. And then I talk about post-meal, doing the 10-minute walks, twice as effective as metformin for controlling postprandial glycemia, again, a type 2 diabetes reversal or prevention marker. And metformin is the number one prescribed medication in the world for type 2 diabetes, which we just saw a recent study come out that showed that long-term mortality benefits were no different using metformin. That was the presumption because it has some benefit in terms of...
Their studies are all over the place. So there's studies coming out
there's a
saying
lot.
It increases longevity. So it's just, it's a weird one.
It's a weird one.